Hey everybody, this is Perch. Out for a little walk here, and it's nice. It's like warm and nice outside, and doesn't feel like winter. But at any rate, I posted on Twitter a little example of two panels, and in the first one, I used from the Masters of Evil storyline in the Avengers. This is where Baron Zemo is really trying to we're gonna go take our enemies. We're really gonna go beat them up, and we're gonna do it. Kind of villainous speech. And in the other one, I used a panel from Rick Remender's current Scumbag comic, which it is keep in mind, it is, as Minnie pointed out, it's satire, is true. But at the same time, it's also, it's indicative of kind of Twitter culture and language. And I think that's probably where, when I made these comments about using current culture and current events and all the rest of that stuff in comics, why it usually is a bad idea, because it makes things sound super, super dumb. I think that one thing you can do with comics is you can look at ones that were made 30, 40 years ago, and you can read them today, and there's certainly some old-fashioned wonkiness that pops up from time to time, whether it's a phone booth or some kind of weird fixation with disco that a lot of the comics went through, like roller skating and disco. You think Dazzler, but there was a lot of that went on. Definitely dates the books. But in today, there's this desire. Well, let me throw one more thing out there that is maybe a surprise. A lot of people have commented that they're tired of Nazis. Everything is a Nazi. Everybody's a Nazi. A Nazi this, Nazi that. And I would agree that Nazis are an overused villain in comics. Completely overused. When you have an entire range of aliens and gods and monsters and super crazy villains and madmen and the Green Goblin and Nazis, they go to Nazis a lot. And I think there's this fascination with fascists. Like, fascism is the worst. And yeah, fascism is terrible. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But it doesn't need to be the villain constantly in every comic. At any rate, this panel I posted from Scumbag features this kind of villainous fascist. It's clearly intended to be right-wing people. And they're saying, death to the beta cucks is what they're chanting. And then they go on with the social justice warriors, libtards, and virtue signaling morality police can suck our toxic masculine assholes. And it's hard to look at that and not go, somebody's been on Twitter too much. It's eye rolling. And yes, the defense of this, as many have pointed out, I was like, but Remender said it's meant to be satire. Yeah, I get it. I mean, arguably, it's all satire at this point. That's kind of everything in comics. But at the same time, it's where I think we need a new word. It's where cringe has been overdone, and a lot of people throw that out with everything. I was watching Jurassic Park with my kids for the first time. They'd never seen that film. And it was fascinating on multiple levels to see young Sam Jackson. I don't know. I'd forgotten that he was in that, but of course he was in that. But it gets to the end. It's like produced by Kathleen Kennedy, and it's like I just started chuckling because her name is now associated with the person who's purposefully ruining Star Wars forever. And it is all satire. Everything is satire at this point. But here's, I think, the challenge that I have with current comic writers and stories in general is it feels like, if you were alive in the 90s when Vertigo started happening, there was a bunch of comments made by Neil Gaiman, actually at the time, Rachel Pollack, various creators there, and Grant Morrison, actually, talking about how there was a responsibility for writers to bring something new to the table, to not rehash the same stuff over and over and over, and that they really needed to surprise people. And that's maybe some of the origin of the, give people what they need, not what they want. Give people something they weren't expecting. And the problem is that when you read a lot of this stuff, it is what I'm expecting. It is not a surprise. It is kind of, it's the same stuff over and over and over again. And I'm longing for different storytelling. I'm longing for different insults. I'm longing for different enemies. I want something new. I interrupted myself earlier. I was going to say that a lot of people have mentioned that Nazis are overused in comics, and they absolutely are. That is something that is has been going on for a while. Like, you'd be surprised if you pick up 70s comics and 80s comics and 90s comics, less than the 90s, but definitely in the 70s and 80s. And like, Nazis are all over the place. Like, they're just, that is the go-to for comics. And I think part of what made some of the 90s, in particular the indie comics in the 90s, really amazing is the fact that they branched out. There were different villains, different threats, different environments in some cases. And that is one thing I think you can credit with that area, is there was a lot of experimentation done on the indie scene that was pretty cool. And now the indie scene seems very fixated on satiring Twitter and current social media and that kind of stuff. And I think that's where I think the satire excuse, or the this is just satire reason, it doesn't really hold up anymore. I think it's been the go-to for so long. I get it. You want to say it's satire, but on the same token, like, it's repetitive. It's repetitive satire. It's like, I don't think you get points for saying, oh, this isn't what I really mean. I'm making fun of, this other stuff, when so's everybody else. Like, at what point does it stop being satire and it starts just being, the same? At what point does it start being unoriginal? I think that's what I catch. I don't know if my views match other people's. I don't know if you, the person listening to this, kind of feels the same way. But because when I hear the complaints from various fans in the store, wherever it happens to be, it doesn't line up with me. No, I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for what some people are. I'm not looking for a return of 90s and pouches and that kind of stuff, for example. I'm looking for the return, or maybe even not the return, the emergence of new. I'm looking for new. I'm looking for something that doesn't feel like it's tired from the second I read it. And keep in mind, by the way, this is in the eye of the beholder. What's new to somebody may be old to somebody else. So it's a very unique, very personal thing. But it's why I say that I can forgive a ton of sins in a comic book if the writer, the creator, is trying something different. I think trying something different is really where it's at. So, overall, I think I do get tired of satire as a go-to for any kind of thing, any kind of excuse for, in some cases, bad storytelling. I get it. You want to kind of mock current systems, current social media. The problem is that when you mock them, and you simultaneously participate in them, then it all gets very, at that point, it's the tail wagging the dog completely. And I don't think you're being, anywhere close to as clever as you think. But what about you? What is your story? What is your thing that you want to have? What is your, what do you want? Because, and I think people should think about it more, because it's not, if suddenly we got a bunch of comics that resembled Youngblood, for example, from the 90s, I don't think that would be a better thing. I think that in many cases, the dialogue, the dynamics, the other things would be just as repetitive, just as carbon copy as ever. And I don't think anybody would truly be happy with that, at least for me. But I don't know. I like to do these compares and contrasts with the 70s, with the 80s, with the 90s, and today. I think it's interesting when you do that. I think you learn a lot when you do that. I think you realize that some of the things you remember might not be as great as you thought. Like, for example, I do think that as I said, Nazis were used continuously back in that time period, just as much as they are today. But what is different is a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the scripting has fallen into, again, I'm bothered by that word satire, because it feels like it is, let's call this cheap social media ripoff, let's call this satire. When really I think it's, let's just, do the, to me it always comes across as the laziest possible work. It's like, let's just copy what somebody's saying on Twitter and there's my villain. And that's somehow even worse than reusing Nazis for the 800th time. But I don't know. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Most importantly, though, thanks for listening.